Gemara. Wednesday's Gemara is Daf Chav Zayin. We're actually up to Daf Chav Vav on the base, towards the bottom, where Shmuel comes along with a new din. Shmuel says, this is the middle of the page, in Sech Shavuos. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said, Gomar belibay. If you make up in your mind that you want to abstain or to do something, a vow cannot be in your mind. You have to express it. How do I know that? It says levate b'sfasayim. You have to say it with your lips. It's not good enough in your heart. You have to say it in your lips. Says the Gemara. Meisra, I'll ask you a question from a brisa. And the brisa itself is so cryptic that first the Gemara tries to decipher the brisa and then goes back to Shmuel. So Shmuel came along and said that in order to make a vow, it's not enough to think about it. It can be machshava. You have to actually practically say it. So Mesa has a question. We're middle of Chavav and Beis. Excuse me, the last narrow line. Mesa question says the Brisa bisfasayim. It has to be with your lips. You know, it's a mevatis fasayim. Beloy belev. You cannot have it in your heart. It says levate bisfasayim. Get out of it. And this is talking about the Shavuos Bitui, and you bring a carbon earlier. Not in your heart, clear. So that's the ratio. But then the Sefer the Bride says, Goma believe benign. I don't know if you had in mind good enough. Whatever he says, it says everything. Sounds like to incorporate also even in Machshav. Now, what's going on here? The Bride just contradicts itself. I'm just started saying, but you have to utter the words, not good enough to think about it. And then you say, Goma believe benign. That is how you know it's good enough in your mind. So before we deal with Shmuel, let's first see if we can come up with a pshat on the brisa. Rav Sheshes says, "Holei kasha." It doesn't about me. This is how you read the brisa. Bisvasayim with your lips. If you had in mind that I'm going to say the words, then your machshava doesn't work. Because you said in your machshava, you thought that you're going to have to express the words. So it does not become a shvu until you actually say it. And if you didn't say it, it's not because Machshava said it should be. Even though we have a rule, Dvarim, Dvarim, I will get in a minute. What about Goma Beliba Stam? What about Stam? You had in mind, you didn't say, I have in mind, I want to say this. I have in mind to no longer eat bread. Then that's a valid truth. On the contrary, so how will you say you could make a shvuah machshava? Why does the Brisa say it doesn't work? Only if you in your mind you said I want to say the words. Kasha Shmuel. Shmuel clearly said Goma Beliba is not a good shvuah. El Shmuel Kasha, it's a problem of shvuah. So the same Rav Sheshes said, well, I dealt with the Brisa, but that's how I would think the Brisa is. According to Shmuel, I'll have to learn the Brisa very differently. Because Shmuel holds a machshava for a shvuah is not a valid shvuah. So Amar Rav Sheshes. This is how you're going to live right according to Shmuel. This is how you say. Bisfosayim, in your heart is never good. But bisfosayim with your lips, you intended to say, I interdict eating wheat bread. What came out of your mouth was pasoidim. But you said, so you have to say. But you said the wrong thing. You're supposed to say, in mind, you thought you'd say, I'm going to ask for wheat. Instead, I asked for barley. And that is not a good matter because it didn't happen. You didn't carry out your machshava, even though we have a rule. So this is whole thing like a toss. It came out the wrong way. The whole thing was a toss. What about goma believe you had in mind to say wheat bread? But you just said I asked him some bread. You forgot to say that you were, to specify which kind of bread. Then minayin, how do you know that's effective? Since your machshava says bread, wheat, you said bread stam, but your machshava all along was wheat. You just forgot to say it. How do you know this machshava works? But stam, I have a machshava. If I had a thought, I won't eat bread. That doesn't work. You actually said something. But you didn't say all the way through. So the question would have been, maybe you should ask her all bread because that's what you said. But because my machshava, in this case, your machshava is not contradicting what you said. When we say dvarim shavalev, dvarim, heart doesn't have any impact. That's talking about when you're contradicting what you said. Here you're not contradicting at all. You're just explaining what you meant, what you said. That is not a problem. Says the Gemara. Makes lots of question. It says Mitzis for Sechatishma. It says in Pasuk that whatever you utter, you have to make sure that you adhere to. And Sisa, then you'll do it. And the way you made it, ain't the Elisha This Brisa clearly says the following: only if you utter the words. Gama believe in nine. How do you know if you just thought? There's enough time. It says in the pasuk that they came and they brought donations to the base of English, to the Mishkan. It says that it refers to these people as the div leiv, charitable people in the heart. So we see from the word that div leiv, extra that the leiv, if you want to donate to the Mishkan, charity, that's enough just to think about it. Kasha Shmuel says we make a vow, you have to actually say it. Shiny Hossam Dechsid. There, when they're giving the money to the Mishkan, it says, Kol the Div Leiv. The Torah clearly says that Kol the Div Leiv should give and everything else. So the Torah specifies that this case is an exception. Once we know that at least by tzedakah to the Mishkan it works, they're giving money to the Mishkan, it works. Kol the Div Leiv. So everywhere it should work, just thinking about it. Truma and Kochim, Truma and Kochim. Truma, Rashi learns, Truma means literally they gave to the Mishkan, towards the building of the Mishkan. And the Kochim is they gave money for the Karbonis. In both of those cases, it says in the Div Leiv, and by Kochim it says also the Div Leiv. So therefore, we have a special pasuk and we have a rule. The Torah repeats the same thing twice, means that these are unique. Taisa says that Truma does not mean Truma to the Mishkan at all. Truma, Taisa means literally Truma, because in the Nechshav Machshav, it says there right by Truma that Machshava is good enough. Is good enough. The one who holds Rabbi Yehuda, the one who says that two psukim melamdin. What do you say? How the chulin v'kochim. Chulin, you're trying to learn chulin. A person makes a shvur to himself, whether in his mind he thought about it good enough, and you want to learn from kochim. Even though Truma compared to Kachim is much lower, but compared to Chulin, Truma is much higher. And Chulin Kachim, like I'm reading, you don't know Chulin Kachim. Wrote the Chozayin on the top of the page of the Mishnah. This is Wednesday's Gemara. Says the Mishnah, Nish b'levatlas a mitzvah, you made a shvur to mevatl a mitzvah, v'lei bittul, you made a vow that you are not going to do a particular mitzvah. And we had a few days ago, Rashi says over there, for example, you're not, instead of saying sitting in the sukkah, Rashi says building the sukkah, which will come back to the Daf Chavtes. So clearly there's a second right from Rashi. He holds a mitzvah to build the sukkah, not just to sit in the sukkah. Like Rashi says Makkah of Ches. And we'll see later in Gemara. Rashi later in Gemara. So you made a shvur to cancel a mitzvah. V'lei bittul. The part you didn't cancel. You said I make a shvur I'm not going to sit in the sukkah, and the part did sit in the sukkah. Great, you did a mitzvah of sukkah. But was I over the avera of I didn't keep my shvur. Potter. The din is that you're a potter, you're not over aveda, made a shvur against the Torah. What happened to Kayim? You made a shvur, I will sit in the sukkah on sukkahs. The light came and you didn't fulfill the mitzvah. So not you went against the mitzvah Torah, you supported the mitzvah Torah, but the point you didn't sit in the sukkah, so you're over sukkah, that's for sure. Well, you're also over the isur of not keeping your shvur. Potter, you're a potter. Again, you're a potter. Why are you potter? Shahayib bedin l'chayda. You would think shechayib kedivli Rabbi Yehuda. You should be chayiv like the words of Rabbi Yehuda b'mseida. So Rashi says kedivli. Rabbi Yehuda has no opinion here because Rabbi Yehuda will hold you're not potter in either case. But it's kedivli. Following his logic, you would have thought that the din should be otherwise, and that is as follows. Where the Torah says that you have there's no Easter or mitzvah to eat bread, and he had no precedent, and yet had and you made a shvur, I'm going to eat bread, I'm not going to eat bread. You have to follow your shvur mitzvah, a mitzvah which you were instructed in Hasinai to go ahead and do this mitzvah. Surely you should be chayiv. Surely you should be chayiv. You have the impetus. They said to him, no. No. Im amrit b'shvua shus. You know why? The pasuk says when it comes to shus bitu lahara oilehetiv. And we learned before that every shvua has to be in hein and lav. If every shvua has to be in hein and lav, or according to Kiva, lahaba and la'ava, a shvua has to be able to be flip side. Lahara lehetiv. This very shvua you could have done it the positive way, you could have done it the negative way. But when it comes to mitzvah, I make a shvua, I'll sit in the sukkah. That's a positive thing, great. But you can't make the shvur fakir. You can't say, I make a shvur, I won't sit in the sukkah. You can't do that. It's against the Torah. So she can't also balav gehain. Toima b'shvur mitzvah also balav gehain. She means a bittul potter. If you swore to him about it, he didn't potter. So big machzik is showing me in this case here. So you're telling me it's not a shvur's bittul. but is still a Shavuos Shav or something? Are you still over for not keeping your Shavuot, just like you don't bring a carbon over the other? Because this word of lav and hain is only by, if you make a Shavuot that I'm not going to eat matzah, you can't. Here you're making a Shavuot to support a mitzvah. And the question is if it's chal. And we're saying over here that the reason why it's not chal is because of lav and hain. You can't do the both sides, positive and negative. So it's not a shus bitri. So is it anything at all, or is it nothing? If it's something, you still get malchus or shur shav or something else, but you don't get the carbon. Taisus learns that Yehudim say that actually, not like Rashi, Yehudim say that holds that if you made a shavua that you're not going to do a mitzvah, there's two parts of the mission. First part of the battle mitzvah, and then second kind. Now, Yehudim say this moed that if you made a shavua to mevatel mitzvah, it doesn't work because ain't isa chalalisa, ain't shul chalashua. It's only if you're doing it in a positive way. Because we had him murdering in the Dern of Chesed, Yishbaitiv Akayem Amar of Gidol that a mitzvah is boyin al mitzvah is a good thing. Our Gemara concludes Lizuruz of Alma. It's only to motivate you because the shua cannot be chal and shua. The human says hold that it's chal, but only in that way where it's in sync with what we already swore in Hasina. Tell you what Torah learned in the Gemara. I would have thought if you swore to cancel a mitzvah and you didn't follow Yeshua Yechayiv, you should be chayiv. You violate Yeshua, even though you did a good thing. You didn't do that later, but you violated Yeshua. Just like over there, Shavuot limited only things which are permissible. Af harod, when you're harming yourself, you're not doing a mitzvah, you're harming your nefesh, is the shus also. Oiti, what do I exclude? When it counts a mitzvah, that Shavuot doesn't count. What about yochol nishbal lekayim mitzvah? What about if I made a Shavuot to fulfill a mitzvah? I didn't fulfill it. Sheikhayiv. I would have thought not only am I over the fact I didn't do the mitzvah, but I should also commit another sin that I didn't keep my Shavuot. Again, it says they have to have both options, and since you don't have an option when it comes to a mitzvah to say I won't do the mitzvah. Just like when you're harming yourself, it's something that's permissible. Something here. What am I excluding? It's a mitzvah. So right now we're saying because the pasuk lahara laheti we're talking about rishus, and the Gemara will continue later and say, how do you know? Maybe it's talking about mitzvahs also. Lakim Shapotra. Yochav would have thought, Nishma Lahoral Asma, you made a shvur to harm yourself. V'loy Heda. And you didn't harm yourself. Yochal Yehei Potter. Now this is a permissible shvur. If you remember the Gemara in Achayvul, we had a machlekes in that big test. Machlekes Tanoim, if a person is allowed to harm himself. And they bring a eye from this brayse so that you're allowed to, because we're calling this a shvuas reshus. We're calling this a shvuas reshus by because yochel lahora atzabasina means beating yourself up, and clearly allowed to. So this Gemara uses there as to support those tanoim that hold you're allowed to harm yourself. Yochel lach b'das atzmai, even though halacha is not allowed to. Tabaleva lahora leheitim ma'atav reshus afara reshus avi. Nishba lahera asmas are included for harming yourself. Lahera shoes b'yoda. You're allowed to harm yourself. Clear, but I say you're allowed to harm yourself, and therefore it's a valid shua. Yochel nishba lahara lachem. If I made a shua, I'm going to harm others. Lahera didn't harm them. I would have thought Sheikhayv. Oh, there's a shua. You didn't keep your shua. Remember, harming others is very aveda. I'll be chayvul somebody else. Exclude nishba lahara lachem. Won't harm others. Lahera she'ena shus b'yoda. You don't have permission to do that. What do I want to do good to other people, which is a good thing. How do you know that is a valid shvut? The Asia when you're harming others, harming yourself, what are we talking about here? How cares plenty? I'm going to beat him up. F says I'm going to split open his brain. Wrong language. Okay, so that's clear. In the Braise, you're allowed to harm yourself. You're just not allowed to physically harm others, but you're allowed to physically harm yourself. Says the Gemara, after all this said and done, how do you know the kroyi b'davar reshus ksivi? How do you know the pasuk is talking about lahara laheitiv means only reshus? Dilma b'davar mitzvah ksivi. Maybe the Torah means lahara means to do an aveda and laheitiv means to do a mitzvah. How do you know the shoe is not chal? No, maybe there's another layer here. You can't think so. Why? Because the be'inan hatava dumidhara, And lahara dumi the hatava. The way we read the pasuk lahara lahated means that they both have to be the very same way. That even when you're doing lahara, you're really doing hativ, and even when you're doing lahativ, you're still doing lahara. So how would that work in mitzvahs? Let's learn the pasuk. The akish hara latov would take it completely. If it's a hekish, it has to be completely the same, as if the outcomes are the same, even though the methodology is different. So let's see how that would work. Can it be working with mitzvahs? Ma hatava eina bebitla mitzvah. When you said you lahativ, question, definitely no question. I'm not saying I'm not going to do a mitzvah because that's bad for you. Not putting on tefillin or not doing any other mitzvah is bad, right? Not eating matzah and Pesach. So af hara, since hatava cannot be talking about canceling a mitzvah, right? Hatava must be talking about doing a mitzvah. So ra also must be talking about doing a mitzvah. How do you do ra doing a mitzvah? Tava means doing something positive. Ra means refraining from doing something. So tava means I'm going to eat matzah and Pesach. And the flip side, ra would be, I won't eat chametz on Pesach. Because they're both now talking about, they both have to be the same. Because it's a hekesh, the toiv and the ra have to be the same. So they both are doing good things. But one is doing it in the way of positive, and one is doing it in the way of negative. Positive is, I will eat matzah. And negative is, I won't eat chametz on Pesach, if it's a hekesh. So let's see if that works by mitzvahs. So ma hatava ein mitzvah, afaro ein bitl mitzvah. Hara gufa mitzvah hara gufa hatavi. If so, then how is that raw? It's actually good, even though the methodology is by not. What's a normal example of hatava? I will eat. And what's lahira is I'm not going to eat. No, denying yourself. So the same thing here when it comes to, but because they're exactly the same, what are you denying? You're denying yourself from eating chametz. Okay, so really they're the same thing. Okay, so that's the problem. And then we're makish hatavlara. Mahara, what's ra? If you take ra in isolation, don't compare it to just hara. What's hara? I'm going to do a bad thing. I'm going to do an aveda, right? I'm not going to eat matzah. Ain't b'kiyum mitzvah is not by kiyum mitzvah. Afatova, so hatova has to be also. Even though I'm going to do a positive thing, you know what? The negative, the raw is I'm not going to eat matzah on Pesach. I'm not eating. And what's the flip side of that? The hatova, I will eat chametz on Pesach. So both have the same outcome, but because they have to be the same, it's a hekish, but they do it different ways. Hatova is in a positive way, and hara is in a negative way. Is hatova gu harai? So what's that? So hatova is bad. So that's why you can't have. If it's a hekish, it has to be exactly the same. So therefore, it can't work by mitzvahs. For your mother, if that can't work on mitzvah, it can't work on anything. Any hatova is bad mitzvahs. Even the shus should be exactly the same thing. If so, bedvar shus nami lemishkachas lo. If so, by the shus is exactly the same thing. You know what's good for your body, what's bad for your body. If even though the hara is denying myself, I'm denying myself something bad, which is bad for my body. So just like you have a problem with mitzvahs, you have a problem with anything. They're not different from each other. You can't use a hekesh. If use a hekesh, it makes it the same. So if you have a problem with mitzvah, you have a problem with rishus. I'll tell you how we know mitzvahs. You're right. And with the itzrich oy, what do you mean lahad? Could have just said lahated lahara ulahated. Why say lahara oy lahated oy? Oy is lerabbis. Oy comes to teach you hatova sachedim. Oy is extra to teach you where you're helping others, which is a mitzvah. Sorry. Hatova sachedim. We're talking about here. We learned yesterday. He's talking about like giving a matana to an usher. We're not talking about a mitzvah. So hatova sachedim is shmamina bedover shuskivi. How do I know? Because if we're talking about by mitzvahs, what I need a pasuk hatova sachedim. Madach hara sachedim is rabbi. Madach is saying you cannot hurt other people. Why? Because you're going against the mitzvah. Hatova sachedim. Boy, you got to tell me you can help other people. Surely you can do the mitzvah. If you cannot go against the mitzvah, you can go for the mitzvah. So what we're talking about, if you need to tell me specifically, if you make a sure to help others, great. And if you make sure to harm others, it's bad. We cannot be talking about mitzvahs. Because tell me not to harm others, we know anyway you can't harm. That's what you do. So you tell me, we learn from the fact that oy. We need oy for something altogether different. We needed to tell you. You would have thought that the only time your chayiv is, it says the pasuk, lahara ulahativ. I would think you have to make two shuros. You know what? I'm chayiv a carbon if I make two shuros. One is lahara, one is lahativ, and I'm over both of it. It's lahara ulahativ. Remember, we have a chayk Rabbi Yishon and Rabbi Yishio. Every time it says u, does it mean or does it mean and? We'll remind us of again the more in a minute. So so when answers we follow the opinion we follow the opinion that when it says ooh it can mean or. So it doesn't mean you need both. The Gemara says Hanichal Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Yosha says that Vim means literally and, not or. What's the story? The time we learned Ish Asher Yekalal Es Aviv Es Ima. If a person curses his father and his mother, Ainli El Aviv Ima, I would have thought only if he curses both of them together. Aviv Ima Ima Aviv curses only one of them in 900. It says in Pasuk Aviv Ima Kilel. It says Ish Asher Yekalal Es Aviv Es Ima. There it says Aviv first, and then Moishumas Aviv Ima Kilel. Why is it repeated again? Tamlan Aviv Ima Kilel. Aviv Kilel Ima Kilel. Because the Torah says it again at the end of Aviv Ima Kilel, spells it out. I'll tell you that either one you're chayiv. No, but if you wouldn't have had that extra limud, you would have thought you're not over. Mikal side you did both because it says and vs and. So Rabbi Yisha holds whenever it says and does not mean or, and means and. No, oi is or. That's what we're saying. We don't need oi to tell me or because we said we're going to use oi to include. That's only talking about rishus. So we said no. We need oi to be mechalik. At least according to Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua holds if it wouldn't have said the word oi, if it would have just says lahara ulehetiv, according to Rabbi Yeshua, you would not be chayiv a shvua. A shvua is bitui unless you made a shvua positive, shvua negative, over both. So oi is no longer extra. How can you tell me oi is extra? To tell me to teach you only the shus? That's what I'm saying here. Yeah. So according to Rabbi Yeshua is saying you're right. We can use oi if you don't need oi. Rabbi Yeshua says and can also mean or. Rabbi Eliezer says by Mikal, mashma shneim ke'echad, mashma echad asvad. I mean, and it could be or. The Torah does not say both together. We'll say it means or. It means or. And what do you call it? Because it talks about climb there. It says yachdov. And Rabbi Yeshua therefore does. And why does it say yachdov there? Rabbi Yeshua says the only time that we say it has to be together if it adds the word yachdov. Otherwise, it can mean or. Rabbi Yeshua says no. There says yachdov because otherwise you'd have thought you're working with a cow over there and you're working with a donkey over there. Even if they're not together at the same time, you're already over climb. So it says yachdov they have to be tied together to be over. So Rabbi Yeshua, okay. So according to Rabbi Yeshua, is no longer extra. But the Gemara says no. I feel the same with Rabbi Yeshua. But Rabbi Yeshua is not a problem. You want to know how he knows that Shavuos don't apply to mitzvahs? Because look at Rabbi Akiva. We learned a couple of days ago. We learned Rabbi Akiva, the Dodish Ribo Yemit. Remember, according to Rabbi Akiva, the Shavuos bit is not only for the future tense, but it's also for the past. I says Lahara Laheti, which is all future. And because it says beginning Kol, and it says again L'chol Mavate. So Rabbi Akiva says we use, because he learned from Nochamish Gamzu, he uses the method of Ribo Yemit and Ribo. And what do we do with Ribo Yemit? Ribo, Marbe Kol Mili, and you're Mamayit, something which is totally the remotest thing from the original. And what was that? The Gemara says, what's the mayit? Mitzvah. So he uses the miyut to be mayit Shavuos mitzvah. So he already has it. So Rabbi Yeshua holds Rabbi Akiva. So I don't need any pasuk here. Or I don't need anything for that. Says the Gemara, so you tell me that me it is mayit and mitzvah. What is mayit and mitzvah for? If you're telling me so if you're telling me that these psukim here, lahara laheitiv, was talking about rishus, and then therefore the pasuk is b'mayit, it's bar mitzvah. Eliyamid bar mitzvah if you can tell me that this pasuk lahara laheitiv includes mitzvahs, then what's Rabbi Akiva left to be made? There's nothing else to be made. He includes everything, any kind of shvua, future tense, Ezra, even though it hurt me, past tense. What's left? It must be mitzvah. Or the shus I can make a shvur. Surely the Eibush made a mitzvah of it. But Rabbanu Shapir come later. Rabbi Yehuda Meseder. Rabbanu said a good thing to be Meseder. Then you need a hein and a lav. You don't have hein and a lav here. In the case we said laheitim means I'm going to help other people out. Lav afagav the lesser b'chlal haraz chedim. That's a hein without a lav. You said laheitim means I'll do good to other people. You can't make it sure I'm going to harm other people. So you see, you don't need to have this thing of every shvur that I make has to be able to have the converse or the flip side of it. You don't have such a rule. That's what Rabbi says. So Rabbi Rahman, yet the Torah says, Laheti, we said before, says the Braisa. So how can I make it to the mitzvah? I've got the lesson of the mitzvah, even though you cannot do the flip side, you cannot go against the mitzvah, it's included in the shur. Nu, Rabbanon, What am I going to say? Hasam Isa Beloy Ativ. I could say I won't do good to the person. Who said every time I say I won't do good to the person, I'm doing an Aveda? If I say I won't give tzedakah, that's an Aveda. But we had a thing called Matana Lashirim. And we had some days it's talking about even to a poor person. There's no mitzvah to make a poor person rich. We had a whole sugya there in Ksubis. What you have to day machsoida, how much you have to give to a poor person, depending who the original status. There's no mitzvah. So matana la'ashirim to make it, even if we're talking about an ani and the mitzvah tzedakah. I did my mitzvah tzedakah. Now I'm thinking it's very nice of you, very benevolent, but I have a right to say I won't. So loy etiv does not always mean you're doing an aveda. So it's shaykh to do etiv, atav as a chedim, and shaykh to say loy etiv. There is a lav and a hein. But over here, by a mitzvah, let's say mitzvah lulav and sukkah, it's possible to say I won't bet lulav, and they can't. So there's no lav at all. Let's just do the Mishnah. Shavuos, you made a shavuos shaloi oichel kikazu. I made a shavuos I won't eat this loaf of bread. Shavuos, I made a shavuos shaloi eichelen. I made a second shavuos. Now there's a difference between oichel and eichelen, as we'll see tomorrow. Oichel means I won't eat a drop. Eichelen means I won't eat it. I won't eat the entire whatever that piece is in front of me. But still, it's one on top of the other. It's not chal. Shavuos shaloi eichelen made a third shavuos. And we'll talk about why he's making through. 3. The ochla ain't chayv lachas. You only chayv one aveda. Zuhi shavuos bitui. This is the example. Everything we learned till now is an example of a shavuos bitui that I will eat, I won't eat. Shechayovin als doing a kodesh, you get kodesh for it, and v'al shgogos a carbon. If you made a shegeg, you bring a carbon oil v'yedit. Shavuos shav. What about a shavuos shav? A shavuos in vain al omut shalev she'evan. Chayovin als doing a makis v'al shgogos. But there for mezid you get malchus. But shegig, you don't bring a carbon. It's not a shavuos bitui. Shavuos bitui is only about in the future. Then over the past, but that you're going to do something. Not that the mice already happened. We had a few reasons for it. We'll stop here and change tomorrow, Mr. Shem. Have a good day, everybody.